This is a story about love that refused to fade, even after 7 long years of waiting. A story about distance, sacrifice, and the powerful moment when two people finally come face to face after building a relationship through nothing but screens, words, and promises. But this is not just a love story. This is a test of emotions, a test of expectations, and most importantly, test of reality. Because sometimes, the hardest part of love isn't falling in love, it's finding out whether that love can survive. In the real world, Forrest and Sheena's journey didn't begin in the Philippines. It began years ago through messages, through late-night conversations, through moments shared across time zones. Like many modern relationships, their connection started digitally. But unlike most, theirs lasted days turned into months. Months turned into years. 7 years. 7 years of talking, dreaming, planning, and waiting. Waiting for the moment when they would finally meet. But as time passed, the question became heavier. What happens when two people who have only known each other through screens finally meet in real life? Will the chemistry still be there? Will the emotional connection feel the same? Or will reality expose differences that were hidden behind distance? Forrest has thought about this moment countless times. He has imagined what Sheena would be like in person, the way she would smile, the way she would speak, the way she would react when they finally stood face to face. But imagination can only go so far, because reality is unpredictable. And now, after 7 years, that moment is no longer a dream, it's happening. Forrest is traveling to the Philippines, but he's not going alone. He's bringing someone very important with him, his mother, and that changes everything. Forrest's mom isn't just a travel companion, she represents something deeper. She represents family, she represents judgment, and she represents the voice of reason in a situation filled with emotion for her. This trip is not just about meeting Sheena, it's about protecting her son, because from her perspective, 7 years of an online relationship raises serious questions. Why did it take so long to meet? Is this relationship truly genuine? And most importantly, is Sheena the right person for her son? These are questions she carries with her as they begin their journey. The flight to the Philippines is long, but for Forrest it feels even longer because every mile brings him closer to a moment that could change his life forever. There's excitement, there's nervousness, and there's fear. Fear of disappointment, fear of awkwardness, fear that the connection he has built for years might not translate into real life. Meanwhile, in the Philippines, Sheena is preparing for the moment she has been waiting for. 7 years, that's how long she has waited to meet Forrest. 7 years of believing in a relationship that many people around her may have doubted. 7 years of holding on to hope. But now that the moment is finally here, the emotions are overwhelming. Excitement mixes with anxiety because she knows something that many people don't talk about. Meeting in person changes everything. It removes the safety of distance, it removes the comfort of screens, and it forces both people to confront the truth as the day approaches. Sheena prepares herself mentally and emotionally. She thinks about what to wear, she thinks about what to say, but most of all, she wonders how it will feel. Will it feel natural? Or will it feel like meeting a stranger? Back at the airport, Forrest and his mom finally arrive. The atmosphere is different. The air feels heavier. Everything feels real. Forrest takes a deep breath. This is it. There's no turning back now as they move closer to the meeting point. Time seems to slow down. Every step feels significant. Every second feels longer. And then, it happens. Forrest sees Sheena. For the first time, not on a screen, not through a camera, but in real life, there's a moment of silence, a pause, a brief second where both of them are trying to process what they're seeing. This is the person they have spent 7 years talking to. This is the person they have shared their thoughts, their emotions, and their dreams with. And now, they're standing right in front of each other. The first interaction is filled with nervous, inner GYA smile, a hesitant greeting, a moment that feels both familiar and completely new at the same time. Because even though they know each other deeply, they don't know each other physically, and that difference matters. Forrest's mom watches closely every expression, every movement, every word. She's analyzing the situation in a way that only a protective parent can. She notices the body language, she notices the tone of voice. She notices the small details that others might ignore because for her, these details matter. They reveal the truth behind the relationship. As the initial meeting unfolds, there's a mix of emotions, relief that they finally met, awkwardness from the unfamiliar situation, and curiosity about what comes next, because the real journey starts now. Spending time together in person is very different from talking online. Online, you can think before you speak. You can hide your reactions. You can present the best version of yourself. But in real life, everything is immediate, everything is visible, and everything is real. As they leave the airport together, the dynamic begins to shift. Now it's not just about meeting, it's about connecting. It's about understanding each other in a completely new way. The conversations feel different. The silences feel different. Even the smallest interactions carry weight. Forrest tries to be himself, but he's aware that this moment matters, aware that every action is being observed, not just by Sheena, but by his mom. Sheena, on the other hand, is trying to balance her emotions. She wants everything to go well. She wants this to work, but at the same time, she can't ignore the pressure of the situation because this isn't just a romantic meeting. It's an evaluation, an unspoken test, and both of them know it as they begin their time together in the Philippines. Cultural differences start to appear, small things at first, ways of speaking, ways of expressing emotions, ways of interacting. Things that didn't matter online now become noticeable and sometimes challenging. Forrest's mom notices these differences immediately. She sees things from a different perspective, a more practical perspective. She's not just looking at love, she's looking at compatibility. She's asking herself questions. Can they live together? Can they understand each other long term? Can this relationship survive beyond this trip? Meanwhile, Forrest is caught in the middle between his feelings for Sheena and the influence of his mother's opinions. This creates tension, not openly, not dramatically, but subtly, and that subtle tension begins to shape the experience as the first day comes to an end. Emotions are still settling. There's a lot to process, a lot to think about. Because the reality is, this is only the beginning of a journey that will test everything they thought they knew about each other, and as night falls in the Philippines, one question remains. Was the wait worth it? Or is this the moment where reality begins to challenge everything they believed in? That question lingers in the air as the first night in the Philippines quietly settles in. Forrest lies awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment from the day. The first look, the first words, the first impression, it all happened so fast, yet somehow it feels incomplete. Because deep down, he knows something. Meeting someone in person doesn't instantly confirm love. It begins a new phase. A phase where feelings are tested, not imagined. On the other side, Sheena is going through her own thoughts. She sits quietly, reflecting on the meeting. For years, she imagined this exact moment, but reality feels different. Not worse, not better, just different. And sometimes, different can be confusing because it forces you to question things you were once certain about. The next morning arrives with a new kind of energy. The excitement of meeting has faded slightly, replaced by curiosity and awareness. This is where the real connection begins to form or fall apart. As Forrest, Sheena, and his mom prepare to spend the day together, the dynamic becomes more complex. Now it's not just about two people, it's about three. And that changes everything. Breakfast becomes the first real test. Simple conversations reveal deeper truths, the way they communicate, the way they respond, the way they handle small, everyday situations. Forrest tries to keep things light. He asks questions, makes small jokes, tries to create a comfortable environment. But underneath that effort, there's tension because he knows both Sheena and his mom are observing him and each other. Sheena, meanwhile, is trying to show her true self, but it's not easy. She's aware that she's being evaluated, not just as a partner, but as a potential family member. Every word feels important. Every reaction feels significant. Forrest's mom remains calm, but observant. She listens more than she speaks, and when she does speak, her questions carry weight. Not aggressive, not confrontational, but direct enough to make things feel serious. She asks about Sheena's life, her plans, her expectations, and subtly, her intentions. It's not an interrogation, but it's close enough to create pressure because these are not casual questions. These are questions about the future. As the conversation continues, small cultural differences begin to surface again. The way Sheena expresses respect, the way Forrest communicates casually, the way his mom interprets both. At first, these differences seem minor, but over time, they start to build. Because relationships are not made of big moments alone. They are built or broken by small, repeated interactions. After breakfast, they decide to explore the area. A simple outing, a chance to relax, a chance to connect naturally. But even in these relaxed moments, the tension doesn't completely disappear. Forrest walks beside Sheena, trying to close the emotional gap between them. He wants to feel that spark, that natural connection, that confirmation that everything they built over 7 years is real. But something feels slightly off. Not wrong, just not fully aligned yet. And that uncertainty stays in his mind. Sheena notices it, too. The slight hesitation, the moments where conversation slows down, the small pauses that didn't exist online because online, silence can be avoided. In real life, silence speaks. Forrest's mom continues to observe quietly, but internally, she's forming opinions. She's comparing what she expected with what she's seeing, and so far she's not fully convinced. Not because Sheena's doing anything wrong, but because the situation itself feels uncertain. 7 years is a long time, and yet, this feels like a beginning, not a continuation. As the day progresses, fatigue starts to mix with emotions. Jet lag, heat, mental pressure, it all adds up, and when people are tired, their true selves start to show. This is where things begin to shift. A small misunderstanding occurs. Nothing major, just a simple miscommunication, but it creates an awkward moment, a pause, a slight tension in the air, and suddenly, everything feels more fragile, because when a relationship is new in real life, even small issues can feel big. Forrest tries to smooth things over, he laughs it off, changes the topic, but the moment lingers because it revealed something important. They are not as perfectly in sync as they once believed. Sheena becomes a bit quieter, more thoughtful, more careful with her words, and Forrest notices, which makes him think even more, and over can create distance. Forrest's mom sees all of this clearly to her. This is not just a small moment, it's a signal, a glimpse into what the future might look like, and that concerns her. As evening approaches, the emotional weight of the day becomes heavier. 3 people, 3 different perspectives, all trying to understand the same situation. Forrest begins to feel pressure from both sides, from Sheena, who wants reassurance, and from his mom, who wants clarity, and balancing those two is not easy. That night, conversations become deeper, more honest, more real. Forrest and Sheena finally get a moment alone, a chance to talk without external influence, and this is where things get important, because now they can speak freely. Forrest asks her how she feels, not just about today, but about everything. Sheena takes a moment before answering, because honesty matters. Now more than ever, she tells him the truth, that she's happy they finally met, but also that she feels nervous because things feel different, and she doesn't know yet if that difference is good or bad. Forrest listens carefully because he feels the same, but hearing it out loud makes it real. He admits that he expected things to feel more natural instantly, more comfortable, more certain, but instead, it feels like they are starting from the beginning, and that realization is powerful because it changes everything. 7 years of emotional connection now needs to be rebuilt in the real world, and that takes time, more time than they expected. Meanwhile, Forrest's mom is having her own thoughts, separate, independent, and increasingly concerned. She questions whether this relationship has been idealized for too long, whether both of them fell in love with an idea rather than reality. And that thought stays with her because, as a parent, she cannot ignore it. The next phase of this journey is no longer about excitement. It's about truth, raw, uncomfortable, necessary truth. Because the longer they stay together, the harder it will be to ignore what's real and what's not. As the night ends, there is no clear answer, no conclusion, only questions. And those questions are growing, stronger, heavier, more urgent because time is moving forward and decisions are getting closer. The fairy tale of waiting is over now. Comes the reality of choosing whether to continue or choosing to walk away. And as part 2 comes to a close, one thing becomes clear. Love brought them together, but love alone may not be enough. That realization hangs heavily in the air as a new day begins in the Philippines. The excitement that once fueled this journey has now transformed into something deeper, something more serious, uncertainty. Forrest wakes up with a different mindset. No longer just hopeful, but thoughtful, careful, because now every moment feels like it carries weight. Every interaction feels like it could shape the future. Beside him, the silence feels louder than before, not uncomfortable, but not easy either. And that's the difference, because comfort should come naturally, but right now, it doesn't. Sheena feels it. 2. The shift, the subtle change in energy. The way conversations now require effort instead of flowing effortlessly, and she begins to wonder something she never wanted to question before. Was their connection stronger in distance than it is in reality? That question alone is enough to shake everything. As the morning unfolds, Forrest, Sheena, and his mom come together again, but today feels different. Less excitement, more observation, more awareness. Forrest's mom seems quieter than usual, but her silence is not empty, it's full of thoughts. Full of conclusions that are slowly forming. She watches the way Forrest and Sheena interact, the pauses, the hesitations, the effort, and to her, it's becoming clearer. Something is missing, not love, but ease, natural, connection, the kind that doesn't need to be forced, and that concerns her more than anything because forced connections don't last as they sit together. The conversation begins again, but this time it goes deeper. No more surface-level topics. No more light distractions now. It's about the future. Forrest's mom asks questions that cannot be avoided. What are your plans if this works? Where will you live? How will you handle it? The difference is, they are valid questions, important questions, but also heavy ones, because neither Forrest nor Sheena has clear answers. Not yet, and that uncertainty becomes visible. Forrest tries to respond with confidence. He talks about possibilities, ideas, plans that sound good in theory, but even he knows they are not solid, not real yet. Sheena listens carefully, and while she appreciates his effort, she also feels something else. Doubt, not in him, but in the situation, because she realizes something important. They have spent 7 years building emotional intimacy, but almost no time building real-life compatibility, and those are two very different things. As the conversation continues, tension slowly builds, not explosive, not dramatic, but steady. Like pressure increasing beneath the surface, Forrest feels it. He feels caught between defending his relationship and acknowledging its flaws, between supporting Sheena and understanding his mother's concerns, and that internal conflict begins to show. His tone changes slightly, his patience becomes thinner, not because he wants it to, but because pressure changes people. Sheena notices this shift immediately, and it affects her, because now, it's not just about their relationship, it's about how that relationship is being questioned, evaluated, and possibly doubted. She begins to feel defensive, not aggressively, but emotionally, because she has invested 7 years of her life into this, 7 years of belief, 7 years of loyalty, and now, it feels like all of that is being quietly challenged. Forrest's mom, however, remains steady, calm, but firm in her perspective. She's not trying to break them apart, she's trying to understand if this is real, or just hopeful thinking. And in her eyes, the signs are mixed, very mixed, as the day progresses. Emotions continue to rise. Small conversations turn into deeper discussions. Simple questions lead to complicated answers, and slowly, the cracks begin to show. Not huge cracks, but enough to notice, enough to feel. At one point, Forrest and Sheena find themselves alone again, and this time, the conversation cannot be avoided. It's no longer about how they feel, it's about what they want, and whether those two things align. Forrest asks the question directly. What do you see happening after this? Sheena takes a deep breath, because this is the moment where honesty matters more than comfort. She tells him that she wants a future, a real one, not just calls, not just messages, but something stable, something certain, and she wants to know if he can give her that. Forrest hesitates, not because he doesn't care, but because he's unsure, and that hesitation says everything, because sometimes silence answers questions more clearly than words. Sheena notices it, and it hurts. Not visibly, not dramatically, but deeply, because after 7 years, she expected certainty, not doubt. Forrest tries to explain. He talks about needing time, about adjusting, about understanding things better. But to Sheena, it sounds like uncertainty, and uncertainty feels like risk. Meanwhile, Forrest's mom is observing from a distance, and she can sense that something important is happening, something that might define the entire outcome of this trip. She sees the emotional weight on her son's face, the seriousness in Sheena's expression, and she realizes something. This is the turning point, the moment where everything either moves forward or starts to fall apart as the evening approaches. The atmosphere becomes heavier, conversations slow down, energy drops because emotional exhaustion is real, and they are all feeling it. Forrest begins to question himself, not just the relationship, but his own expectations. Did he wait too long? Did he build something in his mind that reality cannot match? Did he confuse emotional connection with real compatibility? These thoughts are difficult, but necessary, because avoiding them would only make things worse. Sheena, on the other hand, begins to protect herself emotionally. She becomes slightly more reserved, more careful, because she realizes something important. She cannot be the only one holding this relationship together. It has to be mutual. It has to be certain. And right now, it doesn't feel that way. Forrest's mom finally speaks again, and this time, her words are more direct than before. She doesn't criticize, she doesn't attack, but she expresses concern, real concern. She tells Forrest that relationships need more than history, that they need alignment, they need clarity, they need confidence. And right now, she doesn't see enough of those things. Those words hit hard because they are not emotional. They are logical, and logic can be difficult to argue with. Forrest feels the pressure intensify because now he cannot ignore it. He cannot avoid making a decision, not immediately, but soon. Very soon, as the night comes to an end. The emotional distance between them becomes more noticeable. Not because they don't care, but because they are. Thinking, processing, questioning, and that creates space. The kind of space that can either lead to clarity or separation. As part 3 reaches its final moments, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. They waited 7 years to meet, but now they may only have a few days to decide everything. And sometimes time is not on your side. That reality settles heavily as the final phase of their journey begins in the Philippines. The energy has changed. Completely, what started as excitement turned into curiosity. Curiosity turned into tension. And now, tension is turning into decision. This is no longer about seeing how things go. This is about choosing a future, or walking away from one. Forrest wakes up earlier than usual. Not because he has to, but because his mind won't let him rest. Thoughts keep repeating, moments replaying, words echoing. He sits quietly, staring out into the morning light. Realizing something he can no longer ignore, this is the moment where he has to be honest, with himself more than anyone else. No filters, no expectations, no expectations. No pressure, just truth. Because whatever decision he makes now will define everything that comes next. Sheena is also awake, but unlike before, she doesn't rush to reach out. She doesn't try to fill the silence, because now she's waiting. Waiting for clarity, waiting for certainty, waiting for Forrest to show her without hesitation what she means to him. And that silence between them says more than words ever could. Forrest's mom watches all of this quietly. She doesn't interrupt. She doesn't push, because she knows this decision cannot come from her. It has to come from him. But deep down, she already has her own conclusion. Not based on emotion, but based on everything she has seen. Everything she has felt. Everything that didn't quite fit. As the morning continues, the three of them sit together one last time. The atmosphere is calm, but heavy. There's no pretending anymore. No avoiding, because they all know. This is the moment. Forrest takes a deep breath, and finally, he speaks. Not casually, not carefully, but honestly. He looks at Sheena, and for a moment, everything else disappears. 7 years of memories, 7 years of connection, 7 years of believing in something that felt real, even from a distance. And he acknowledges it. He tells her that what they had was real, that the connection they built mattered, that she is important to him, very important. But then, his tone shifts, because truth is not always comfortable. He admits that something is missing, something he cannot ignore, not because of her, not because of anything she did wrong, but because the reality they are experiencing now feels different from what they imagined. He explains that he expected things to feel natural, to feel certain, to feel like a continuation of what they already had. But instead, it feels like a beginning that is uncertain, unclear, and incomplete. Sheena listens silently, because deep down, she already knows she felt it too. From the first day, from the small pauses, from the moments that didn't quite connect, from the hesitation in his voice. And now, it's being said out loud, which makes it real. Forrest continues. He says something that is difficult, but necessary. He says that he's not ready to promise a future, not yet, and maybe not in the way she deserves, because she deserves certainty. She deserves confidence. She deserves someone who knows, without doubt, and right now he cannot be that person. Those words land heavily, but they are honest, and sometimes honesty hurts more than anything else. Sheena takes a moment before responding, because this is not just a conversation. This is the end of something she held on to for years. She looks at him, not with anger, not with disappointment, but with acceptance. She tells him that she understands, because she felt the same distance, the same uncertainty, the same difference between what they had and what they are experiencing now. And even though it hurts, she would rather face the truth than live in a hope that might never become real. There are no raised voices, no dramatic reactions, just two people acknowledging reality and letting go of something that once meant everything. Forrest's mom watches quietly, and while she feels sympathy, she also feels relief, because this outcome avoids a future filled with doubt, a future that could have been more painful. As the conversation comes to an end, there's a sense of closure, not happiness, not sadness, but understanding, because sometimes closure is not about winning or losing, it's about clarity. Forrest, thanks. Sheena, not just for coming, but for the years they shared, for the support, for the connection, for everything that was real, even if it didn't last forever. Sheena nods, because she knows those years mattered, even if they didn't lead to the ending she once imagined. The final moments between them are quiet, respectful, real. No promises, no expectations, just acceptance. As Forrest prepares to leave, the weight of the experience stays with him. He didn't lose something fake, he lost something real, but also something incomplete. And sometimes that's harder to accept. On the journey back, Forrest's mom finally speaks, but not to say I told you so. Not to judge, but to reflect. She tells him that love is important, but timing, compatibility, and reality mattered just as much. And this experience was necessary because without it, he might have spent even more years wondering. Now he knows, and knowing is powerful. Back in the Philippines, Sheena stands alone for a moment, taking in everything that just happened. 7 years. Ending in a few days, it feels surreal, but also freeing. Because now she can move forward, not with questions, but with answers. And sometimes, answers are the closure we need. As the story comes to an end, one truth stands out above everything else. Love is not always enough. Distance can build connection, but reality reveals truth. And not every love story is meant to last forever. Some are meant to teach, some are meant to prepare us, and some are meant to end, so that something better can begin. Forrest and Sheena's journey may not have ended in marriage, but it ended in honesty. And in a world where emotions are often complicated, honesty is the most valuable ending of all, because, in the end, it's not about how long a relationship lasts. It's about what it teaches you and how it changes you. And this story changed everything.